Here's some news that'll make your British tea go cold faster than a winter morning in Manchester. I'm Jetset Jeremy. I help smart people escape the 9 to 5 by mastering money, travel, and location freedom. If that sounds like you, stay tuned. Today we're diving into a topic that most Americans never even consider until it's knocking on their front door like an overzealous tax collector. Can you actually lose your US citizenship? Spoiler alert, the answer is a resounding yes, and some of these reasons will make your head spin faster than a London bus doing a U-turn in Piccadilly Circus. Most folks think that once you've got that shiny American passport, you're sorted for life. Job done, citizenship secured, nothing can touch you. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's about as accurate as saying fish and chips is healthy because it contains potatoes and fish. The uncomfortable truth is that US citizenship, despite being one of the most coveted legal statuses on the planet, can vanish quicker than British sunshine. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me explain something that caught me completely off guard when I first learned about it. Not all American citizens are created equal in the eyes of the law. There are two distinct categories, and this distinction matters more than you might think. First, you've got natural-born citizens. These are the lucky ones born on US soil, including all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and territories like Puerto Rico and Guam. Then, there are naturalized citizens, those brave souls who went through the rather lengthy and expensive process of becoming American by choice rather than by accident of birth. I myself became one of these naturalized citizens just over 12 years ago, so I am personally quite concerned about this. Here's where it gets interesting, and by interesting, I mean potentially terrifying. If you're natural born, you're protected by the 14th Amendment like it's a fortress made of constitutional steel. Unless there was some serious fraud involved in your original birth documents, which is rarer than finding a decent curry outside of Birmingham, your citizenship is essentially bulletproof. But if you're naturalized, well, that's a different kettle of fish entirely. Your citizenship was granted through a legal process, and anything that can be granted through legal process can theoretically be taken away through the same channels. It's like being given the keys to a fancy car, only to discover later that someone can come and repossess it if they find out you fibbed on the application. If you're connecting to public Wi-Fi without a VPN while sipping your airport cappuccino, or watching this video at your local coffee shop, you're basically inviting an unfriendly stranger to read your emails. I use NordVPN to avoid that kind of intimacy, just saying. Now, let's start with the most straightforward way to lose American citizenship, voluntary renunciation. This one's actually quite popular, believe it or not. Thousands of Americans officially give up their citizenship every single year, and the US government publishes these names quarterly, like some sort of citizenship breakup announcement. The process is remarkably bureaucratic, as you'd expect from any government procedure. You must appear in person at a US embassy or consulate outside the United States. You can't do this from inside America, which makes sense when you think about it. It's like trying to quit your job while still sitting at your desk. You'll sign an oath acknowledging that you understand the consequences and that this decision is as permanent as a tattoo on your forehead. Oh, and they'll charge you over $2,000 for the privilege, making it one of the most expensive breakups in the world. Once you've gone through with it, the consequences are immediate. Your US passport becomes about as useful as a burnt-out light bulb. You lose voting rights, forfeit access to Social Security benefits, and if you ever want to return to America, you'll need to apply for a visa, just like any other tourist wanting to see the Statue of Liberty. So why would anyone voluntarily walk away from American citizenship? Well, there are several reasons that actually make perfect sense when you think about them. The biggest one is taxation. America is one of the only countries that taxes based on citizenship rather than residence. This means that even if you're living in Timbuktu, the IRS still wants their cut of your income. For wealthy Americans living abroad, this can feel like paying rent for a flat you never visit. Then there are political beliefs. Some people become so disillusioned with American policies that they want to sever all formal ties. Others might be required to renounce their US citizenship to take on certain government roles in other countries. And sometimes, people simply decide their future lies elsewhere. They've built families, businesses, and communities abroad and want their legal status to reflect their actual life. But here's where things get properly unsettling. What if you never wanted to give up your citizenship at all? Can the US government actually take it from you against your will? The answer is yes, and it's called denaturalization, which sounds about as pleasant as it actually is. If voluntary renunciation is like choosing to leave a party, denaturalization is like being dragged out by security while protesting your innocence. It's the lesser-known side of American immigration law, but it's very real and affects real people every year. The US government can revoke your citizenship if they believe you never should have received it in the first place. This isn't done lightly, and it's not automatic, but it happens more often than you'd think. The legal basis for this has been established for decades, and the Department of Justice has dedicated teams working on these cases. The most common trigger for denaturalization is fraud or misrepresentation during the original naturalization process. This could mean failing to disclose a criminal record, using false identity documents, lying about immigration history, hiding political affiliations with groups hostile to the US, or concealing involvement in human rights violations. Here's the part that would make even the most stoic British person spill their tea. There's no statute of limitations on this. The government can come after you 5, 10, even 30 years after you became a citizen if they uncover evidence that your application was dishonest. It's like having a sword hanging over your head indefinitely. Let me share some real examples that illustrate just how serious this can get. There was a man from Bosnia living quietly in the American Midwest who had become a naturalized citizen in the late 90s. Years later, US officials discovered he had participated in war crimes during the Yugoslav Civil War and had intentionally omitted this information from his immigration forms. Result? Citizenship revoked and deportation back to Bosnia. Another case involved a former concentration camp guard who had been living peacefully in the US for over 50 years. When investigators proved he had lied about his past, he lost his citizenship and was removed from the country, despite his advanced age and the decades that had passed since his crimes. These aren't isolated incidents either. They're part of a systematic federal effort to ensure that naturalized citizens obtain their status legitimately. And fraud isn't the only thing that can trigger denaturalization proceedings. Certain post-naturalization activities can also put your citizenship at risk, especially if they occur within the first 5 years after becoming a citizen. If you join organizations advocating for the violent overthrow of the US government, serve in the military of a country hostile to America, or take senior roles in foreign governments without notifying US officials, you may come under legal scrutiny if these actions suggest intent to abandon allegiance, though actual denaturalization remains rare and must go through due process. The government's argument in these cases is that such behavior demonstrates you were never truly loyal to the United States and that your naturalization was based on false pretenses. It's not always about what you actually did, but what you hid and what that reveals about your intentions when you applied for citizenship. You may have noticed the word denaturalization being thrown around a lot more recently, and at this rate, a day will not go by when you do not hear that word. Now let's talk about dual citizenship, because this confuses more people than trying to understand cricket rules. Yes, dual citizenship is generally legal. I certainly hope so, as I am one. The US doesn't encourage it, but they don't prohibit it either. You can be both American and Canadian, Mexican, British, or hold citizenship in many other countries simultaneously. However, and this is crucial, the US government pays very close attention to your intent. If you obtain foreign citizenship for normal reasons like ancestry, marriage, or residency, that's usually fine. But if you take an oath renouncing allegiance to the US, or serve in a foreign government in ways that suggest exclusive loyalty to another country, you might be walking into legal quicksand. The takeaway here is that dual citizenship is allowed, but not if it undermines your commitment to the United States. It's a delicate balance that requires careful consideration and often legal advice. So how does this denaturalization process actually work? Inside the Department of Justice, there's a dedicated office whose mission is to investigate and build legal cases against people who may have obtained citizenship fraudulently. They work with Homeland Security and Immigration Customs Enforcement, using cutting-edge technology, including biometric databases, AI-based pattern tracking, and global intelligence sharing agreements. This means someone who became a citizen decades ago might still face investigation if new information surfaces. The past has a way of catching up with people in the digital age. Once the DOJ believes it has grounds to act, it files a civil complaint in federal court. The targeted individual is notified and has the right to hire legal representation and fight the case. But if the court sides with the government, the consequences are severe. Citizenship is revoked, passports are cancelled, voting rights are lost, and the person becomes classified as deportable under federal law. For natural-born citizens, the protections are much stronger. Under the 14th Amendment, citizenship acquired by birth is constitutionally protected and can't be revoked for political beliefs, associations, or foreign activities. However, there is one extremely rare exception involving fraud at birth, such as fake hospital records or false parentage claims. The common thread in every citizenship loss case is intent and deception. You can't lose citizenship simply for saying the wrong thing or changing your political views. But if you lied, omitted crucial facts, or acted in ways that violate the terms of your naturalization, your status can be stripped away even decades later. Let's talk about something nobody budgets for: getting hacked whilst browsing social media, waiting at an airport. When you travel, your data is exposed. Every time you log into a bank account, check your email, or book a flight over unsecured Wi-Fi. That's why I use NordVPN. It encrypts my connection, cloaks my digital footprint, and even lets me access websites and streaming services as if I were back home or anywhere else I choose. It's not just about security, it's about digital freedom. Plus, I often find better prices by comparing regions. Some airlines show different rates depending on where you're browsing from. NordVPN makes that kind of comparison possible. So if you're traveling without a VPN, you're not saving money, you're leaving it on the table. Use my link below for a serious discount and travel like someone who knows how the internet works. So what's the bottom line? US citizenship is indeed one of the most powerful legal identities in the world, but it comes with responsibilities and isn't unconditional. If you're a naturalized citizen especially, it's crucial to understand the law, be completely honest about your past, and avoid activities that might jeopardize your status. This isn't about creating fear, it's about promoting awareness. Because when it comes to citizenship, understanding the rules is the best way to protect your status and your freedom to live and travel how you choose. The rules are stricter than most people realize, and ignorance isn't a valid defense in federal court. If you've made it this far, you're clearly a smart traveler, so hit subscribe for brutally honest travel advice. No fluff, no filters, just facts with sarcasm. An additional bonus is you'll be the first to hear if I ever get denaturalized for excess sarcasm. Remember, thousands of people navigate these waters successfully every year, maintaining their American citizenship while living rich, full lives. The key is understanding your obligations and taking them seriously. After all, citizenship isn't just a privilege, it's a commitment that requires ongoing attention and respect for the legal framework that granted it in the first place.